The time is now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Geordie Yam Yam and Tim this Friday afternoon on this NUFC Talk TV daily live show. I suppose, like everything else, there's still lots of speculation and bits and pieces to go over, and we'll have a discussion. What's been being said over the last 24 hours? Well, the last 12 hours. It doesn't feel like 5 minutes since I was with you the last time. Got lots of people in the chat, so thank you so much. And before I start, I just want to thank everybody for their lovely birthday wishes towards myself. Very kind. I feel very humbled with all the shows of support and everything else. So thanks, everybody. So let's get on with the show. I suppose we better do the housework. Welcome to everybody that's watching across the platforms. Thanks to all the people that work in the background, do a great job. Don't forget, people out there in the viewerland, please help us along and smash that like button. Subscribe again, it's totally free. Hit the bell for future content. We do lots of live stream, so you get notifications. Just hit the bell for us, and as soon as we become live, you'll get notifications to come and join us. You can support us by becoming a member, small monthly fee. And obviously, once you become a member, if you've got the option, then if you want to come into the prediction league, where you get to predict each score for the Newcastle games. And if you're in the top 6 at the end of the season, you'll get a nice prize. If you've got a question, and I've seen a couple of questions that we'll get to more or less straight away in the chat. But if you've got a question, try and put a Q in front of it. But again, apologies, because not all of the stuff that's in there will get mentioned. We have a little short window, I suppose, to try and get through as many of the topics as we can. I suppose the main topic of today is going to be all about Isak again. So apologies if we don't get to everybody's chat. But if you want to guarantee it, then use the $sign. Throw me a super chat, and that will guarantee that message read out. And to anybody that becomes a member during the show, or any of our members that gift them out there, will be thanked as we go on. So I've just highlighted a couple of comments straight away. And I suppose you better go and have a quicker look. And this is from Stephen Howe. You've got 2 questions for today's show, Stephen says. Firstly, in Wynn's opinion, Eddie gave an ultimatum to the chairman after the Everton game, which was, it's either me or Mitchell. However, Eddie's story now is 2 days. Into his holiday, he gets notification out of the blue that Mitchell was going. It came as a total shock. So which one is it, as I tend to believe, Howe's version? I don't think, and again, I go on my own opinions, managing, not at a high level, but, wherever you are as a coach, there is hierarchy. There is people above you. And this is why I said, in every great company, there has to be good ownership, good support from a boardroom, and that support has to filter down to the chiefs and the bottle washers that run the show. So as much as Eddie Howe has got a little bit of weight because of his achievements at Newcastle, I still don't think, if I'm honest with you, given an ultimatum, it's either him or me, I don't think Eddie's got that much pull. How do you feel, Tim?
I don't believe that he's given an ultimatum like that myself either. I think that at the end of the season, after the Everton game, yes, they've had a meeting, and I think Eddie Howe would have went in that meeting and said that in his opinion, we need X, Y, and Z, and we should try and go about it in whatever way. And perhaps Paul Mitchell has gave his version of what he thinks should happen. Maybe there's been too much of a distance between the two visions, so therefore Paul Mitchell, a few days later, it's kind of been on his mind anyway. And after that meeting, it's like, well, it's not for me, this gig. I'm off. And I think that Eddie Howe, I personally believe Eddie Howe when he says it was a surprise. Certainly the timing. that he didn't expect Paul Mitchell to leave like that. So I don't think he's gave an ultimatum, Eddie Howe. I think he's gave, like I say, his vision, if you like, to the board. And then it's kind of went from there. But I don't think he's given an ultimatum like that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And like to the point of the end of his question there, where he says that during his holiday period, Eddie Howe seemed quite shocked because he didn't get to know about this information until 2 days into his holiday. That leads me on very well into part of the show. So I'm gonna hold that one there until we start the show properly. Hells, thank you so much, Sean. You're the star, buddy, and that's a lovely gift. Cheers, buddy. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Gary. Happy birthday to you. There you go. Fantastic, Sean. You're the star, mate. Thank you. And his second question. This is from Steve Howe. Is Mitchell said the transfer strategy isn't fit for purpose last summer. Wasted it chasing Gay with bids well below his valuation. We apparently only bid 50 million, however, that summer. Ekatike went for 16 million and Trafford was in a relegated side. Both were obtainable for under 40 million. So if we had the 50 million that we were being bid for Gay, would it not have been wiser to use it on those two? And to be fair, there is not an argument that I can give to Steve to say the differ, because common sense tells you. And again, I'm going to put my coach's head on, right? The only difference and the only argument that Eddie Howe has got during the time that this happened is how vulnerable we were with two centre-backs out with ACLs. And when you look at trying to fill a gap, trying to fill a void, I agree with the sentiment of what Steve's just put there, because the availability to go down that avenue and pick up two players that were obviously on Eddie Howe's mindset to go and get. But I think there's more to it than just picking players up. I think the relevance at the time of us going to source Gay was so important because of how vulnerable we were at the back. Your thoughts on that, Tim?
I agree that at the time, yeah, we were so short. So perhaps that was a priority to get Gahey in for that reason. It's really hard to kind of nail down, what's happened there, because we don't know the internal discussions going on, where you've got that budget and you've got these lists of targets. And, like you've said there, centre-back was probably priority for that reason, but we don't know if we were trying to pivot to other targets and it didn't work for whatever reason, or if there was disagreement between the two about pivoting to targets and one said one thing, the other said another. I mean, obviously it is clear that they weren't aligned as they should have been. I mean, I think with to kind of speak on a broader sense on the whole transfer policy, if you like, I think Mitchell, when he's came in, he's known for, it seems anyway, kind of getting the players through the door. So the first mistake was not cementing what this structure was going to be before hiring Mitchell, or even if you had cemented that structure, not planning it properly with Eddie Howe. And I think with Eddie Howe, one of the things with how he targets players is he goes into detail about a player's character, and he goes into detailed checks on who they are. And that sometimes, it will always factor into the decision as to what Howe wants. And I'm from the outside as a fan, I'm thinking, well, just take a punt on a player. Sometimes you can't have it perfect. On the other hand, I look at Howe's body of work since he's came through, and one of the building blocks of success in the last 3 years is having a group of players who are all in on the tactics, on the team spirit, and willing to die for each other on the pitch. So, Fabian Schär a few years ago I remember he said at the Milan press conference, first Champions League game back, I think he was asked about, the squad and the team, and he said he's never known anything like it. That was his words around how good the spirit is and how together everyone is. So that building block, it's only one building block in amongst many. I get that. But when that building block is one aspect of the success that we've had, I have to acknowledge that and respect that when Eddie Howe was seeking that ingredient in a player. So maybe that's an issue where, Paul Mitchell is looking at players and he's not factoring that in, because obviously he's not in the dressing room. That's not his domain. He's not really as bothered about that side of things, whereas Eddie Howe is. And then that ties into how you use the money. Going back to that question, you've got a pot of money there. How do you prioritize what player to go for? So maybe there's been a clash there where that aspect has kind of muddied the waters a bit, where there's been disagreements.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the one thing you don't want is disharmony in a squad, because it's like a wildfire. It's a bushfire. If you get one player that's not happy, and this is where, and I'll be honest with you, I'm upset more with the timing that it's come out, right? And like, Terbrug, Zonderlop, Piff's completely disinterested, get them out. He's like highlighting obviously the management, the owners of the club, where the problem lies. I can't blame them, because they're not the ones that aren't issuing or giving us any money. At the end of the day, they have stumped up whatever cash has been available for us to utilise within the transfer window. The biggest problem is for us is, like I say, unfortunately, a lot of the cartel. And we've got a couple of people I've seen in the chat. And again, I ain't gonna issue many warnings, guys, in the chat. I'm more than happy for anybody from any other club that supports the club with passion to come on board this channel and give your opinions. But all I'm going to say to you is, this is your one warning. Keep it clean, keep it friendly, because if I see anything else, and this goes to every mob that's out there with me, supporting me, block it. Because, like I say, we are a very emotional lot at this present moment in time, and all that's going to cause is more uplift and spark a tug of war between, obviously, watchers, viewers, and we're not going to get the best out of what we've had in the past in the comments. So please, like I say, this is your only warning. Don't mind you being in the chat, but keep it friendly. When I look at the Isak situation, and I said this yesterday, I don't think the club have travelled on the same platform as Isak has. Now, I saw a lot of chat yesterday. I jumped on board Specs channel last night, and just again trying to give the rest of the lads some support. And there was a lot of people on there, and like I say, you got a great bunch on there: Arsenal fans, Liverpool fans, and alike. And D-Man was on there, just putting a point of view between Newcastle and the rest of it. And that to me is where we are. We're not a massive club. If you're looking at where we are commercially in business, we're nowhere near where these guys are. We've never been given the chance to become a massive club. And we have to strategise totally differently to the likes of the Liverpools, the Arsenals, the Man Cities, the Chelseas, because they have been given the free end to go out there and spend commercially what they get in without restraints. It's changed. The law's changed for us, rightly or wrongly. And like I say, my finger has always gone not to any of our board members to a degree, but they have to play to the restrictions that are put on us from the so-called cartel, because they do want us, obviously, and the Premier League, because they didn't have to agree to this. They obviously want to keep the business tight. They want to keep the cartel very much the cartel. And it gives very little movement for other clubs to catch them up. And that's why I look at Isak. And again, I don't blame Isak for dreaming. The lad turns, was it 27 26,
26, I think.
26 very soon. You know, it's a short career. Where he is now, because again, who's labelled him this player? You know, it's the team that have been behind him. He didn't come to Newcastle as a superstar centre forward. He came to Newcastle as a project that he's like a rough diamond. It needed buffing up. And that's why I said in the chat on Dredge channel, you know, it says that Isak owes nothing to Newcastle. Newcastle owe everything to Isak. And that is totally wrong. You know, without Newcastle's backing, Isak certainly wouldn't be the type of player that a lot of these top clubs now are after. So, you know, the way I look at this, and again, I don't begrudge Isak from wanting to go and explore his avenues, his options, because he has, to a degree, moved so fast down his trajectory to becoming an elite player. Newcastle seem to have tread in water a little bit. They've hung back, you know, no transfers come through in 3 windows. Again, restricted by PSR money. And you can blame whoever you like. You know, I've put a finger towards Mitchell. Again, disgruntled a lot of people in the chat, in our fan forum, because of that. Blaming Mitchell again. It's not to do with Mitchell. But when you start reading through the lines, and again, you know, you talk about, Steve mentioned earlier about going for Trafford last year. Apparently, we didn't need Trafford because of the amount of goalkeepers that we were in. So even though there was a small pot of money there, Mitchell did shy away from going and getting Trafford because of the amount of goalkeepers that were already on board, which makes sense. You know what I mean? Even though, like I said, those so-called goalkeepers that were on board, there was only really 2 of them were ever going to get used out of the 6. And that's the frustrating thing. You know, an abundance of goalkeepers, 4 that are never going to get within a whisker of playing first team football. So why are they there? You know, especially when you've got this young up and coming, potentially number 1 for Man City, who's picked him up for £14 million. And I say that with a bit of tongue in cheek because they only sold him for 13 million, I think it was, or it's the other way around. They sold him for 14 and picked him back up for 13 million. It's mental, you know. It's mental when you look at it. But they had first refusal. This isn't something that Newcastle have lost. Newcastle was still in there and trying to negotiate a deal. And that's why I think Dubravka was left behind, because they were hoping to do some type of player plus cash movement with Dubravka going to Burnley. And now obviously that's been scuppered because I think Man City came in knowing that their buyback clause finishes by the end of play. I think it's today. So they had to do something really quick to get that buyback clause sorted. So, you know, it does baffle me when, you know, people start pointing a finger at an individual. I made a statement to Win a month or so ago, and I said it's chaotic. The Newcastle at this present moment in time at boardroom level sounds chaotic because of the comings and goings. And I don't believe with what Steve has just said there that Eddie Howe knew nothing of this. What I believe is there's obviously been conversations, and this comes to the first conversation that I wanted to throw at you, because we have heard 2 sides of this story now with Isak leaving. And we're having a quick chat in the green room before we came live on air. And I said to you, how do you feel now as a Newcastle fan that you've been lied to by the management of Newcastle? Because I feel a little bit hard done to. And I don't mean that as in I feel as though they owe me anything at all. But where we had some great communication, it's come out now that obviously 2 people sitting on 2 sides of the fence. You've got a management side, Eddie Howe, his coach, and the players that have flew out to Singapore saying one thing. He's been left at home because he's nursing this thigh injury. And you've got Isak, who apparently, again, according to the rumours that are out there in the social media world, who's leaked his potential movement elsewhere or seeking other options, if you want to call it that. And to me, it sounds very much like he's going to get a fine from the club for breach of whatever it is that NDA, whatever it is that they've negotiated. So where you've got two sides, a club trying to protect one player, one person, his agents have quite openly leaked this information out there to the wide world and the journals. Because at this present moment in time, you can read so many different sides to this story. You have to try and work out a narrative that suits all of the red flags that are in there. Like I said, I just feel a bit disgruntled. I just feel as though at this present moment in time, going forward with all the crap that we've seen, we're going for this player, we're going for that player. I don't know who to believe anymore.
I mean, I feel a bit let down in terms of there hasn't been honesty, from the club, and I think there hasn't been a proactiveness to sort this out with Isak from the start of the end of the season. Like I said last night, if there was doubts about Isak and if he was miffed after having not been given a new contract a year earlier, then they should have planned and even just said to Isak, look, what is the crack? And if he turns around and says, look, I'm not interested in a new contract anymore, I'm actually wanting to explore the options, then I just think, like, as much as he's a brilliant player, as much as in an ideal world he'd be with us next season, if that's what he's told you, I think you just got to be proactive and try and do a deal with a club who can give you the maximum amount of money so you can just carry on and get the replacements in and then beef up the rest of the squad and use it to your advantage. Like I said last night, it's not the end of the world. Right? There is life after Isak if he goes, because we can then use that money to get the players that we need to get, that we're struggling to get, because we're trying to balance this budget that we have. And we either don't want to overpay and take a hit in one position for another, or we simply can't meet the valuations for the players we're going for. But if we get this money in, then we can do that. We can then get these other players in. I think with Isak himself, I think it's quite poor really to be turning up at training and coming off, apparently according to Craig Hope, after 5 minutes, saying that he's got a thigh problem, niggle, and there's scans there that show that there's nothing on the scan itself. But it's a case of, but he's still feeling it, so we have to take his word for it. Yeah, what a coincidence, it comes out that he actually wants to leave. Do you know what I mean? Like, Isak and his agents, and I know agents, they'll be influencing him, and a lot of these things come from agents, but I just think, like, Isak, to your manager, to your teammates, to your fans, just crack on and just get on the plane and do your training. And you can still tell the club what your feelings are, and that's fine. Like I think you said, Gary, like, I understand him wanting to go, really. If you're going to be neutral about it, if you can go to Liverpool and win the Champions League, potentially win the title, like next season, not in a few years' time, like 5 years' time, then I understand that. But don't feign injury if that's what he's doing while you're trying to push away from the club. That's where I feel a bit let down with Isak. But obviously with the club itself, I feel a bit let down that they haven't nipped this in the bud earlier. But also everything around this, in terms of it ties into the lack of clarity on what's happening with the training ground, the stadium, the CAO, all of that as well.
Yeah, Connor's put in here, we didn't buy Trafford because we bought Vlack for the 20 million cause of PSR. Yeah, that is the exact thing. But I know Mitchell put a block on it. He just said goalkeeper situation. So I assumed that it was the many goalkeepers we had, but he's just put in there that it was actually because of that deal that we had for Vlachodimos, which again seemed bloody crazy. I look at this now, and you look at the amount of spending that the elite clubs are doing in the year 2025. At this present moment in time, we spent £55 million on a player, one player. And that's why yesterday, when I was trying to make a statement, and I didn't want to come across as an ITK or anything like that. And you do get a lot of flack because fans do look, unfortunately, through black and white glasses. We all do. We're all fans at heart. Nobody wants to come and shout dribble, and certainly bad news. Bad news is never good news. And I've just there's a lot of like I say, keyboard warriors as you know out there, and I won't give them the time airtime, if I'm honest with you, simply because we are in a bad situation, and this is what happens when you're in a bad situation, because, like I say, emotion takes over, and we are at this present moment in time. You feel as though you're a laughing stock. Where I was, you're proud to wear a shirt sometimes to walk down the street. Now you just get a finger pointed at you and get taunted because of where you
Where's
are.
Isak going?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy, isn't it, where one player can unhinge. Now, like I said, I spent a bit of time talking about it last night's show when we were talking about Isak's contract details, right? It was shunned by Mitchell because it was said that he was on enough money and there was other more serious and urgent matters to deal with. And it was like the Gordon and the J7's contract that needed to be renegotiated and things like that. And according to some speculation, it was Darren Heels who suggested that we relook, or it was Mitchell that we relook at where we are at the end of the season. Now, again, according to Rumourville, again, I've got nothing on the club, but there's been a £200,000 offer as a recontract given to him. That's been on the table for some time. And that's where I want to explore my options has all come from. Now, this is something that was put on the table, and I had a really weird text message at stupid o'clock this morning after finishing the show, and like I say, going and supporting other Newcastle fans. I did end up having this report come through saying that it's already sorted, apparently. There's agreement in place to somewhere in the region of 130 plus 10, and he's going for 260k a week to Liverpool. Now, again, what you do then is you're looking everywhere to try and find out where this has come from. Do you think there is no way back now? Thanks, Mahabjan Soliev. Like I said, I'm going to read a story, and I don't want to sound like everybody sitting comfortably out there type of story. This was a story that was put out there by Henry Winters, and I must admit, I read this today, and I thought, you know what, there's a hell of a lot of truth in this, and I put it in our chat, and he wrote, and this is verbatim what he wrote. Judging by the reaction to the Alexander Isak situation, Newcastle United have lost the trust of some fans. The excuse of minor thigh injury didn't wash with fans as a reason for Isak missing the tour, especially as the recuperating Lewis Hall J7 travelled. Newcastle have good comms people? Question mark that one. And they need to work with Eddie Howe and the board to reclaim the narrative. I agree with that point. It's about sending a message to the fans that the project will not be derailed by the possibility of a star's exit, that they are ambitious and they are simply working within the PSR strictures, however frustrating those may be. They also send a message to Isak, leaving the dressing room door open in case he changes his mind or a deal can't be done. Messaging is key now, such as it's because of how well Isak has done at Newcastle, how much he has been supported in his goal sprees by talented teammates, developed to an outstanding head coach, outstanding head coach, and backed by one of the most passionate fan bases around, that he has become one of the most admired players in the world. Newcastle did that for Isak. They've helped make him this superstar. So, again, going on what you've just mentioned there, Mahabjan, is the fact that we'd be fools not to leave the door ajar. And you know, when you actually look at the current situation, what's been spouted on a lot of the social media platforms, going back to where we were before, there was a really good one that was, and I've got a couple of videos from the likes of Mr. Shearer, who obviously he was upset. If you listen to a lot of the um, paper talk, you know, Alan Shearer wasn't very happy with everything that was going on. I don't know why the happy clapper's on there. So let me just see if I can sort this out. Oh, I can't. Tim, when I move this screen over, I've got you're not on this screen, but you're still in the background. So don't worry if you see yourself leave the screen at the minute, because Mighty Win has left the building and not gone offline. He's still on there. So don't worry, mate. You are still with me. So this is Alan Shearer's viewpoint on where we stand in the Isak situation.
It is what it is, you know. I think Eddie's got to try and use all his persuasive powers to do what he can, and try and make him stay for at least one more season. If that can't happen, then it is what it is. You have to then get the very best deal for the football club, and if someone's prepared to pay northwards of 150, I guess, then if he really wants to go, then you can't step in the player's way. He's been brilliant for Newcastle. He helped us achieve our dream and win the trophy last year. And if there's no way whatsoever that he can be persuaded to stay at Newcastle, then they've got to get the best deal for Newcastle. And if someone is prepared to pay that what they want, then you have to say thank you and off you go and build for the future, because there's no individual that's bigger than the football club.
I totally agree. You know, as daft as that is, his sentiment to me there is, like I say, we are still in control, even though I do say that with a little bit of tongue in cheek, because we all know the power that players have these days. And what Eddie Howe has to do now is weigh the pros and cons, doesn't he? You know, is it a risk to keep him within a squad that now, you know, it seems as though there's one or two, as much as they're trying to protect him, there's one or two obviously questioning his loyalty to the cause.
Yeah, I know football, like I said last night, football can change quickly. Having said that, I'm still not 100% comfortable at the thought of Isak kind of doing a U-turn and coming back into the squad and giving us another year. I mean, maybe it could work, but my instinct is that we should be working on deals, A, to get the most money we can, and B, to get replacements. I think Darren Lee there made a comment saying about getting Sesko in now, and I agree with that. We should be working to get Sesko in now, and you know, let's say if we did sign Sesko now while Isak's still at the club, we can then say at Liverpool, you know, you do have to pay top dollar, because you know, we've got Sesko here now, and you know, if we want to keep both of them, we'll keep both of them. We'll have both of them on the pitch. But the window of opportunity is then, you know, the clock's ticking. So if we get our replacement in ASAP, we're not going to be as desperate to just get whatever funds we need to get as the clock is ticking, if that makes sense. So I just think we need to be proactive and see what Isak says. You know, if Isak turns around and he's really kind of like apologetic and he's, you know, makes a statement on camera and explains, you know, what his feelings are, and he convinces everyone, look, you know, I'm here, I'm committed, we'll see what happens next summer, but all I'm interested in is playing in the Champions League for Newcastle, trying to win a cup, trying to get top four. Maybe he'll turn around. But yeah, I just think let's try and get as much money as possible and get a replacement in now, and not just a replacement, or also a second striker. And we'll keep on hearing about Wissa. You kind of you really hesitate to say about any signings now that you hear about in the press, that it looks like this is going to happen or that's going to happen. But I mean, fingers crossed we do get Wissa in as well.
Yeah.
And if we do get Sesko in, then bring it on.
Yeah.
And then we can strengthen other sides, other parts of the team.
Yeah, I mean, look, the old song, isn't it? Life must go on. And Newcastle will go on. I mean, we've gone through this so many times now. And like I say, the biggest thing for me is getting a replacement in. And I said yesterday, the Ekitike deal seems to me as though they wanted a replacement. And it may not have been at the start of the season. It may have been a January transfer that he'd negotiated with, as a gentleman's agreement from the club to Isak to say, listen, if we can get Ekitike in, let's get him settled in the club. Give us 6 months, gentleman's agreement. We'll let you go in January. And I think once the whatever contractual agreement that they'd had didn't come. Now, as a player, without the vision being in front of you, without players coming through the door, no DOF, seems to be no backing with your contractual agreement. That, again, a gentleman's handshake, if you like. You do start to worry whether the players got a little bit disillusioned and said, you know what, you're not, the promise that you made to me, you're not keeping. So I have every right now. I've done 3 years for you. Yes, I've improved as a player, but you haven't kept your side of the bargain. I've kept my side of the bargain. You haven't kept your side of the bargain. And that's why I said, I have no issues with Isak wanting to go and play to potentially probably one of the best clubs in the world, with Liverpool, and go on and win trophies. My only concern, and I've said that, is like, I do feel sorry that if he does go before the start of the season, and there's a rumor that there's going to be something on the table, penciled on the table, and again, I think it's going to be 130 million. Again, it's what's come through my phone. I mentioned it yesterday in the chat. 130 million plus 10. We are in a situation, and again, we have got money. We know we've got money, and apparently we're talking around about 65 million for Sesko if we could get some type of personal agreement with his wages, because again, we know he's going to be wanting to come up and around the £200,000 mark. If we can get him on board, I don't think Newcastle, if again having that money behind them, have the weight behind them to say that isn't enough. It depends on how stubborn we want to go into a season with and I have to say it, a depleted squad even more. 2 players coming in and 5 leaving doesn't leave me with, especially if you have a lot of injuries. Now, I hate to sound a little bit disillusioned, because at this present moment in time, I suppose I am. But I do think there's a lot more weight behind Liverpool lowballing us than there is Newcastle sticking the middle finger up and saying, well, that's not enough. Because we are, in the minute, we seem very much like we're in a desperate situation. 3 weeks away from the start of the Premier League, and we've got 1 player in desperate need of a centre-back, in desperate need, I believe, of another centre midfielder, because we've got very little weight in midfield going forward, and desperate need of another striker, if not 2, in the current climate. So, where we are at this present moment in time, like I say, I do think Liverpool have a lot more of the weight behind them than Newcastle have. We've got the player, but the weight of the player who potentially may not be the player we think he is come the start of the season. It's a massive risk for Eddie Howe to take.
Yeah. I think one avenue that could go down is with all the add-ons. So like Liverpool aren't going to budge in terms of, like you say, Gary, if they're looking at the window and they're looking that there's not loads of time left, and that we're not in a great position to bargain because of that. I think it's reasonable for us to kind of go down the route of add-ons and say, okay, fair enough. You're not going to give us the upfront fee that we want, but just insert all these add-ons in terms of if Liverpool win this cup and that cup, or finish here or finish there. I think bite the bullet and accept something along those lines.
Yeah. I agree, mate. I agree. There was one of our lads put in the chat yesterday, and I'd seen it on social media, but apparently it was soon retracted, and I don't know whether there was some type of jibe behind J7's photograph here. Will always be my second home, and there's Isak in the background. Don't know whether that was a personal vibe that went out there, but apparently it was part of the PR team, I think.
When was that posted, Gary?
Yesterday.
Posted yesterday, okay.
Yeah,
after the news broke, obviously.
After the news broke. And that's what I said. You know, I listen, I'm putting, you know, I'm trying to make two ends meet here. I'm not
it's interesting timing, though.
That's what I said. It's bloody coincidental, isn't it? You know, when you think about it. And that's what I said. You know, when I looked at them players coming off the coach, and you've got to take into consideration it's a hell of a flight. And you also have to take into consideration I could understand partially, you know, I could understand if James Bunce had have said, if he's struggling with his thigh, why take him? Just give him, let him recover at home. But then why did he not say that to Lewis Hall?
Yeah.
To J7, you know?
Yeah.
Why not give them also, who have taken such a load to go over there? And then I look at the personas of these players that have got off the coach. And again, you can take into account the travel time. It must have been a horrible flight. You know, they all look knackered. But the demeanour when they were doing interviews, the Dan Burns and the Brunos, you can see. Dan Burn didn't say a lot. I'll throw it on the screen in a second. Bruno did say a lot, to a degree. So, you know, I look at it from both sides of the coin, and I understand where they're going with this. And again, this is why I said it feels horrible that the coach and the players have gone down one avenue to try and protect the player by saying that he's at home, resting, you know, recovering from a strain that no scanners picked up. And yet his agents come out and said he wants to seek other avenues. And I think that's where they've literally got a little bit miffed. And that's why I said I think the club are starting to look at maybe fining the player. But I think there's still a hell of a lot that's got to go on before they get to the bottom of this, if I'm honest with you.
I think the PR team would have briefed the players. Anything about Isak, this is the party line, you know, and just stick to that in whatever words you want to use. But I think that's what they would have been told. But I agree then. So the players are towing that line. But then you've got Isak's agent supposedly is the one leaking all of this, where it's like, no, actually, you know, he wants to move. And you can make your mind up then as to whether this injury is real or not. And to me, the timing tells you it isn't. Yeah. So then that is a bit of a Mickey take, I think, to his teammates in a way. And I would just say as well, like it goes back to the point of that togetherness and players who want to play for us. For whatever reason, if players don't want to play for us, like you say, legitimate reasons, you know, or not, if we can get players through the door and resolve this ASAP, then, you know, it could galvanize us in terms of that siege mentality of anybody here is only here because they want to be, and they're proud of wear this black and white shirt. So, you know, we could maybe go down that route, and I think we need to kind of think about that and don't let this drag on and on and on. And use it, if you like, as fuel for the fire to get the stoke the flames for that passion of playing for this black and white shirt, and that fact that we have players here who love it here and who want to achieve things next season, but they need help, and they're not going to achieve things without that help.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. And that's why I said at this present moment in time, it feels as though we've got a little bit of a void between board level. There is disgruntlement at boardroom level because, like we said yesterday, over 12 months, Darren Eales, we knew, was leaving his post. Surely to God, it doesn't take this long to get somebody on board. We've had so many people apply for the role, but obviously for whatever reason they haven't employed them. Is it people just haven't got the vision that Newcastle, want them to have? They've surely got the credentials, or some of the people that we've done background looks at. They certainly have the knowledge and the credentials to jump on board and move forward with the club. A lot of them have not only had aviation type of background, but also management within another football club. So it's not as if they're coming completely out of the blue, into the hot seat, and that's what I can't understand. The journals, you get linked to different people all of the time, and there was another classic one today with Lee Ryder. I don't know whether you saw that post. It was an absolute. Well, I suppose it was a complete flip flop. He's put something out there that the Trafford bid is still on, and literally within a couple of, I think it was within 10 minutes, the Trafford sale had gone through to Man City. And it's like you don't really know what's going on. Matty Gorman, thank you ever so much, my friend. When you say PSR FFP was only set up to protect the cartel, isn't it the case that Newcastle want it scrapped because they want to form their own mini cartel along with City? Well, listen, you look at, and again, I talk about historical events, and I gather you're a Liverpool fan, and I don't begrudge what Liverpool have achieved over time. They've been a solid founder member, and again, I praised your CEO yesterday with the way Liverpool, again, not spending money last transfer window and pulling it all together to have a big transfer window this window. The big difference is you've been able to build a squad because of financial backing when you haven't had restrictions, the same as City, the same as Chelsea. Now, all I am saying is, why are we not given the same chance? There isn't going to be many clubs, the likes of Leicester, that come out of nowhere and get a chance of winning the Premier League, because by doing that, what you have to ask yourself is, as we had last season, there was one successful club out of 20 that was continually better than everybody else, which was Liverpool, because everybody else could lose at any given moment. It was such an unpredictable league, Premier League last season, and there was only one team in it, if I'm honest with you, from the very early days, and that was Liverpool. And they've gone on now to go and spend, over £300 million to strengthen. We are not allowed to do that. So whether you class that as being a mini cartel, all I want is an even playing field. That's all I'm asking for, and it's not a case of us being a cartel, or it's to have. I don't. I said from the start, I didn't want a Super League at all. Right? I think that would have been the detriment to football going forward. But I also don't want a league like a lot of European leagues are, where you can virtually forecast a winner from 3 teams. What is the point in watching that?
Yeah, but what I would say, right, with PSR, okay, is, so I think there needs to be amendments. Obviously, I agree with everything you've said there, because it's a stranglehold on clubs like Newcastle, because these elite clubs who've won the trophies in the past have then been able to, you've got Man City and, like you said, Chelsea, who've been able to have the spending through these rich owners before the rules. But you've also got the likes of Man United and Liverpool, who, because they've won things in the past through building sides and investment, they've got that history, if you like, and that lure that is kind of that money can't buy. So we would have that if we suddenly won, obviously, trophies in the next 10, 20 years. But now, because they've got this revenue, commercial revenue in place, it's like you can't really catch up.
No.
At the same time, if there was no PSR, then we would be doing what Man City and Chelsea did when they were first took over. So essentially, we could outspend anybody 10 times over. We could literally just go hell for leather and just get whoever we want.
But that don't always make a successful side team,
It
does
doesn't.
it?
It doesn't. No, it
You've
doesn't.
still got to have cohesion within the side.
No,
Before you carry on, mate, because I've got Matty Gorman just throw us a super chat. You're absolutely right, buddy. We've been a sell to buy club under FSG. You're right. I mean, you've lost some superstars, and whoever's been in charge of your finances, and that's why I praised you yesterday, has gone on to find little hidden gems, if I'm honest with you Van Dijks, using the money for Coutinho, bringing in the likes of Van Dijk. You like I say, you have been a club of decent backing, and that's why I said, for us, we've not had any backing, even any commercial business. 14 years prior to 21, when we were taken over, we were screwed commercially by the owner, and that's what I said. Just when we start to tread a little bit of water, having owners that can support us and give us some hope, if I like, it feels as though, because of certain individuals crying wolf, that option was quickly taken away. And I don't particularly just blame, the cartel, as we call it, because it still takes 14 votes in a Premier League meeting. So there's 14 clubs vote for this in before it gets adopted. So all I'm saying to you is, if certain individuals didn't cry wolf, saying that we can't compete with the richest club in the world, we were never going to. I can't guarantee that because it's speculation, but I don't think, even if it was an even playing field, I don't think it would be hundreds of millions thrown into transfer windows. I think it would have been a gradual, stepping stone, because we've still got to move on with the players that we have. But I do believe there would have been quite a major influx of recognised players. And I think that is the other thing. If you guys have just gone and spent silly money on the likes of Wirtz, and like I said, I've already said, and I said this before you actually got or potentially got Isak, it's Liverpool's to lose again next year, in my eyes, with the spending power that you've had. And again, well played, because you've used that spending power very well. But it's like everything, isn't it? You are at the mercy of what we can do. I think we've got to stop giving excuses and making excuses to the reasons why. And because I think a lot of it, we can only point the blame at ourselves. As much as I don't like the current situation, I think from the first couple of windows with the Amanda Staveley business, where everything looked great and the trajectory was so massive, I do think there's been a bit of a sway where we've had to take a step backwards because of the financial situation that we found ourselves in, because of the PSR issues that was sanctioned upon us. And I think that is where the bad taste comes from them and us.
Yeah, true. And I think it's worth elaborating on that point, or mention that point again that you raised there, Gary, about Ashley and those 14 years, because you didn't hear anybody, outside of Newcastle saying, hang on a second, that club that was in Europe every other year before that owner came along, that was knocking on the door to try and win things, is now and actually was one of the higher clubs commercially, revenue-wise. You know, we were up there before Ashley took over, and now all of a sudden, that club has no interest in gaining commercial deals that are going to get in the way of Sports Direct. It looks like to me. Therefore, that club is trailing behind. And when the stature of our club, I'm not saying obviously we're not on the level of Liverpool, and we weren't back then, but we were knocking on the door, and we were a big club back then. And the club was then, it was bit by bit taken down, you know, notch by notch every year while Ashley was there. Whereby by the time he left, our commercial revenue was nowhere near what it should have been.
Exactly.
So I didn't hear anybody raising these red flags outside Newcastle, talking about the way that club was being used, as in us, was being used by that owner.
Yeah, well, this is going on to what DJ Still's just thrown at us. Thanks again, DJ Still, for your $1.99, buddy. Before your takeover, you was one of the 14 PSR votes, exactly for the reason you've just said. Because of where we were, I think it would have been stupid. Because at the end of the day, we all knew that PSR was there to try and protect those around us from going too far away. And I think the way it was sold to everybody, it certainly was sold to me, and the way I read into it, was it keeps everything, the net closed in to everybody. And it was going to be, again, as I've always said, it seemed to be a 3-tier Premier League. You know, you always have the top 6, you have the middle 6, and then the bottom 8, if you like. Well, you can go 7s if you want to go 7-7-6. But I mean, it was always going to be a 3-tiered Premier League. And I think the way it was sold, again, the way I read into it was, by signing this agreement, it just stops the Liverpools, the Man Cities and Chelseas from getting further afield. I don't know how you feel about that. That's how I read into it.
That makes sense. That makes sense as to why they would sign it, definitely. Because hypothetically, Man U and Liverpool, they could really maximize and spend all of their commercial revenue. At the same time, I do think that with PSR, I think that there needs to be changes, but I do understand why. Like, PSRs came in, I think, with the wrong intentions, right? Through the cartel, basically. At the same time, I do think that there's worthiness to some kind of rules along this, of this nature. When you have got these types of consortiums taken over clubs, because the landscape is then just totally skewed when you've got these different types of owners. And it then becomes partly about who's lucky enough to be bought out by one of these owners. Granted, obviously, there's reasons why they would buy the club in the first place in terms of prestige, crowds, etc. But I do, a lot of people might not agree, but I do think that there probably should be something in place. But there needs to be changes and tweaks made to these rules. You know, I was speaking to Andy yesterday about it, and he was suggesting, something like there's a leeway when you first get taken over. There is a window where you can get your ducks in line and you can spend whatever you want to spend, sort of thing. And then it reverts back to these sort of rules. Something along those lines, maybe. Some kind of compromise.
Siddhant Sheila, Newcastle isn't the richest club in the world. Its owners are. If you're worth 10 million and buy a £1 million house, it doesn't become worth 10 million. I think that's a little bit pedantic, if I'm honest with you. And again, I'm only saying the richest club in the world because that is what every other fan tells us we are. And like you say, you are right. It is the owners, but at the end of the day, that money, and I think somebody in the chat made a cracking analogy of what you've just said there. The 10 million that you own makes that 1 million house worth more because you always add to it. So thank you ever so much for your super chat, though, buddy. It is valued anyway. And we've got DJ Steele. I'm not a big fan of PSR, and I'm an Arsenal fan. Well, like I say, DJ, you're more than welcome on this platform, my friend. Everybody is. Doesn't matter what colour you wear, as long as we're all friendly, we're happy with that. Again, like I say, I agree. I think at the end of the day, there has to be some regulation. But it just seems as though, for me, it feels personal because of the way it was bought in and when it was bought in. It can only be to block Newcastle from spending to be like the Arsenals, the Liverpools, the Man Cities, and the Chelseas. And I did make some comparisons, and again, maybe you guys can tell me how true this is, because Premier League spending in 25. The Premier League clubs have been active in the transfer market with a significant spending and revenues generated. Here's some of the spending trends for 25 summer transfer window. Chelsea, 243.77 million, is one of the top 10 for spending and income. We know that, but they still have to sell their hotels and women's team to break PSR. Liverpool already surpassing 300 million in spending with a net spend of 213.68 million. Man City, second in spending with 243.77 million. Following Liverpool. Manchester United, third in spending with 140 million to 153 million. Arsenal, fourth in spending with 140 to 153. Tottenham, fifth, 140 to 153. Bournemouth, notable for strong performance in 24-25 with a profit of 83.8 million. And that's the thing, for me, it's not what we can do, and I suppose we're doing exactly the same as what we've seen a lot of other teams around us do, and that's go to the lower teams, and we seem to be nicking the cream off the milk from these teams. And you look at Brentford, Mbeumo gone, Norgard has gone. It seems and obviously Thomas Frank has gone, who I think is probably the most important figure at Brentford. These teams, we look at our current situation, and when you look at what they're facing, with all their superstars to a degree of moving on, they're rebuilding from the ground up again, aren't they? That's something that Newcastle haven't got to do, and that's why I agree with the comments. One player doesn't make a squad. And what that does, again, it's the Coutinho effect of Liverpool onto Newcastle if you use the money very wisely. And I think that comes hand in hand with a lot of disgruntlement now, because Chris from Evermore, he put on a cracking picture of two sides of the fence, trust the process and what the fuck's going on type of thing. And it seems very much as though you have to sit on one side of the fence or the other. And now, even if we do get the 140 plus million pounds or whatever for Isak, there's still going to be people out there that won't trust the people in situ. And I'm not going to mention names because I don't like to label people. The people in situ with that money to go and spend it wisely, even though these are the same people that have bought in the players that we, have on the back of our shirts because we love them so much. So I do find it a little bit not hypocritical, because it's not. It's just where we are at the minute, isn't it? You've got two sets of fans at the minute wearing a black and white shirt. Some are trusting the process. Some are just, scratching their head and with frustration. And I understand both sides of it.
Yeah, I think that's the key, Gary. Like, I think you've got to look at both sides, and often there is truth in both sides. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, pardon the pun, black and white in terms of it's this person's fault on their own, that person's fault on their own. It's a collective, and I think there's valid points in a lot of these kind of topics within what's going on. I mean, to go back to the PSR situation and the nature of how this came about, that it was personal from these clubs to bring this in. I go back to what I said last night, in that with that being the case, and it's quite obvious it is the case, I don't understand why, if I'm PIF, why doesn't that kind of motivate me? Why aren't I then looking at this and saying, well, they can try and do this, but by hook or by crook, we're not going to allow them to stifle us. So as if you're PIF, you're like, we're going to have everything in place for this club, and we're going to basically shove it right back to the cartel for trying to suppress us, because we're going to make sure we're shit hot in terms of appointing a CEO, in terms of getting a new training ground sorted out, the stadium sorted out, a new DOF. Now Mitchell left. You know, that's what I don't quite understand. Where's that fire to fire back at these clubs? Because it is possible to. We've shown it's possible to make progress, and yes, to make the next step is the most difficult. We've went from mid-table or whatever 11th it was when Howe first came in and kept us up to top 4, top 5. Yes, the next step is difficult. Obviously, we won the cup, but that should be a really motivating and interesting challenge for PIF, to really get the ducks in order and just like go hell for leather and work with what we've got.
Yeah. We've had a couple of more super chats in, so I just want to go on to this. Another one from Siddhant Sheila. How does a Freon invest as much money they want in infrastructure? Do that. Make Newcastle world-class players won't join and stay to take time. Use Isak as your Coutinho. Thank you very much, mate. That's exactly what I hope we do. And we've got Matty Gorman back in. It's taken us 10 years to get to this window. Matty, I totally agree with you, bud. But during those 10 years, you've still been able to win trophies. And that's what I'm saying. You know, and forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm just going to have a quick check. What have you won in the last 10 years? League Cup, FA Cup. Am I right? You've won the Champions League
twice.
Yeah. But that wasn't in the last 10 years.
Was it not?
No, they've won. I think didn't they win 18-19 season 18-19?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, under Klopp it was.
Under Klopp, wasn't it? Yeah.
Right.
So you know, I agree with you. It has taken you a while to get to a position where you can be, spending lots of dosh, but you've always had a good team and have always invested in good players. It's always helped you achieve a decent, platform in the Premier League. You may not have won it, but you're always going to be in the higher performers. And that's what I said. I don't mind anybody winning trophies. I don't mind any team winning cups if that's what you've deserved. And I've said, you were the most consistent team last season winning the Premier League. And all the other clubs around you failed. That was where Leicester took advantage, because during the Leicester reign, every other team around them failed at some point, and Leicester became one of those teams that just nicked the points when they needed to. That was a very few and far between. They aren't an every season event, because we're just not allowed to spend the same money unless you have the commercial business that you guys have achieved over decades. And that's why I said it's not something that we have had the benefit factors from, because of how we've been run as a club. And that's not Liverpool's fault. That's not Arsenal's fault or Man City's fault or Chelsea's fault. And yes, I'm jealous, because you're allowed to get away with a lot of things that we aren't allowed to get away with. And that's why I said, the only way any club is run correctly, you've got to have good people at the top. Now we've found them, it seems as though there's a missing link between the two layers for me. We've got a half-decent coach who seems to have a platform to perform on. He needs, obviously, the players and the support of the players around him to move forward. But between them, there seems to be that missing link. I have no issues with PIF. They seem to be supplying us the money that we can utilise. I do believe that they are. They've been a little bit poisoned, a little bit to our PSR situation when we had to sell Minte and Anderson. I think they're scared. Again, I go back to the issue that they had to get into the Premier League, where they had to go with cap in hand and bail themselves out a little bit with BN Sports issues. So, again, I don't know whether there was something written that they had to keep their nose clean for a certain period of time while they were owners of a Premier League club. We don't know some of these clauses that these guys have to agree to get there. And maybe that's the reasons why we haven't took these buggers to court and said, this is not fair. These aren't, you talk about FFP, the financial fair play. How is that fair play to completely take away the opportunity to spend money? And like I say, and I think that is just the only thing that disgruntles me. Somebody else has just thrown in a super chat. Thank you ever so much, everybody. Lee McFarlane, you have got a question. Sorry, buddy, I've seen a lot of your stuff coming in. Gary, I'm okay with trusting the process, but what is the process? And that is exactly what I've just said to you, Tim. Yeah?
Yeah.
Think we deserve to know that by now. And I think, this is what I said about comms. We've gone from having a club that were open and honest, or seemed to be open and honest, seemed to be, info savvy, and more willing to give us probably more information than we needed to. But we seem to have gone completely full circle now. And we've gone from having people that stood at the front of the club, giving us interviews left, right and centre, telling us the direction, everything going on, to absolutely carte blanche. Or coming out here and just whipping a journalism whirlwind by saying, it's not fit for purpose. And all of a sudden you get statements, and I like everybody else. I mean, you say it until you're blue in the face. I backed Mitchell. I thought he was going to be the person who gets these superstars, because when the likes of Botman, Bruno. I mean, we all knew Tonali and we all knew Trips, what Trips could do. But even Isak, I wasn't totally unsure when Isak come on board. I thought it's a massive gamble for £64 million. It's a lot of money for somebody that hasn't really set the world alight wherever he's been. But obviously they could see something in him. And that's what I said. Why have we gone from being out there in the wilderness, picking up these little gems, to being just a Premier proven person to come into the side because they want the new players to hit the ground running? I can't understand the complete shift in why they've gone from one thing to another. Can you?
I think there needs to be a mix. I think at the start of the summer, for me, it's about having the balance between trying to get Premier proven experience with signings of the ilk of Botman, Isak, Bruno, etc. So that's what I expected us to do, and to me it seems like the obvious way forward, especially when you have, you've got PSR in place and we have a budget to stick to. And I mean, don't get us wrong, it's not as if Bruno and Botman, etc. were cheap. They weren't like just, 20 million. I know Bruno was like 39 million or something, but it's still potentially cheaper.
In today's market, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you were to look at buying Bruno in his current form, you'd be paying somewhere in the region of £80 million for somebody of a younger player. Yeah,
exactly. So go for these players, and then you've got the likes of like the Elangas, etc. to go for. I mean, with Eddie Howe, I think, like you say, he's here. He was here when we bought these players. So I just don't see why he wouldn't be receptive to, if he's presented with these players or him knowing about these players in the first place. I don't see why he wouldn't be receptive to getting these types through the door. And I get that at the same time, he also wants Prem proven. I understand that as well. That's obvious. I don't see why you wouldn't want to marry the two. And I mean, again, it goes back to Eddie Howe. Does he want, one of the factors is character in a player. So he's very detailed on that. Perhaps he wants to make absolutely sure that player is the right character to continue the team spirit that we've built up. That's been one of the factors to get us right up there. and to win a cup and get us Champions League twice out of 3 seasons. So he's very conscious of that. So perhaps there are players out there that talent-wise they might have it, but character-wise he has a question mark against, and he's not comfortable using some of the budget on that player, where he wants to go for a player where he knows he can trust. But again, at the same time, I think if we've got, if we've done our homework, there should be enough players out there and enough players that Eddie Howe knows of, and enough players that are presented to Eddie Howe for him to choose from and to bring through the door that meet those requirements. So yeah, it is a strange one, and I think it's something that should be put towards the club. But again, I think we haven't got a director of football in place. We haven't got a CEO in place, so that obviously doesn't help in terms of having a group of people working together and collaborating and having as much data as possible and information to work off. I mean, with Paul Mitchell, I thought he was going to be, like you say, when we got him in, I thought, okay, let's see what he do. I thought it was a strange one in that he seemed to have carte blanche at Monaco and possibly Southampton. I'm not too sure the details there, but I assumed that there was an agreement in place in terms of how the structure would work, and there'd be a good dynamic between Howe and Mitchell. Yet it became obvious straight away that that agreement hadn't been put in place, and then there wasn't an alignment. And the first thing that happens is you've got these interviews coming out with Darren Eales kind of saying, yeah, Eddie's on the training pitch and that's his domain, sort of thing. And Eddie's like, hang on a second, can I be in on this, please?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's obvious as well that Mitchell, going about it by having a tactics board in front of the players saying, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to go on a journey, and this is what I'm going to do, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. When the players are thinking, well, who's the gaffer here? Like, that's clearly not going to work. So he's cocked up by going about it that way.
Yeah.
And so so I know people say, well, Eddie Howe, was he flexible enough? Maybe not. Who knows? I think, again, it's not necessarily one person. I think the dynamic wasn't right, but I don't see why it's so hard. I don't see why it should be hard to bring in a DOF to work with Eddie Howe and to have the right dynamic and the scouting team whereby you can maximize your resources and identify the players to come through the door to improve you. I don't see why we can't do that. And I know some people would say, well, Eddie Howe is not going to work with anybody else, but
well, it's gone the other way now, isn't it, with this Ross Wilson, who seems to be the favourite now to walk into this position because apparently they're mates. Right. So, you've got, and like I said, I don't care as long as it works. And he does the job that he's paid for. That can go hold hands down and skip down the road for me, as long as they do the job in their own, in their own venture. Just before you crack on, mate.
Yeah, go on.
So I've got DJ still. Sorry, it's been about 10 minutes before he threw this in. Apologies, DJ. I hadn't forgot you, mate. Thank you for your super chat anyway. You can get better value with your Isak money. Your owners should just say to Liverpool, 150 million up front, no pay over 5 years. If they want him, let them play. And that is exactly right. And that's what I said. It has to have value to the club. Before they let him go. They can't let him go for anything. Like I say, my only concern, and it is a slight concern, is the fact that the weight seems to be very much with the players these days rather than the contracts that they've written to. And like I say, what is the point in keeping a player that doesn't want to play for you? Sorry, mate, I butted in.
That's all right. Just if we can sign the likes of, Botman and Bruno along with the likes of the Alangas of this world again, with whoever is in DOF, then great. I don't really care. It's about the results and about who will get through the door, and that will only come if there's the right structure in place and the right dynamic where everyone's pulling in the same direction and there's not a power struggle.
Yeah. A couple of questions have come in. One from Lee McFarlane. Do you think we will sell Isak quickly, or will it drag on as much as our potential incoming so far? I don't think anything. Again, I say this with a little bit of tongue in cheek because I hope I'm wrong. The pressure is on us, not on Liverpool. They've got Ekitike. They've still got Nunez. I mean, yeah, there's talk about they may need to sell another player to have the finances. I don't think they do. I think they've got the finances. They may not have 150 million, but if they throw in a cheeky 130 million bid, like I said, they've offered 120, and obviously he was told they're not for sale, which is where it all started from. But I'll be honest with you, I think it started far earlier than that. I just think it's literally just showing its ugly head now. And the reasons why I said that, we went from a team that couldn't hit a barn door to a team that absolutely seemed to, gallop down the road, to a team that coming towards the tail end of the season, and again, just post the Carabao Cup final, he seems to change his attitude again. And me and Win were quite critical on the situation with Isak, because he does disappear at times. And I still think now, that lad had been tapped up a lot longer than we will ever know. And Tony T and the revenge of the Crumpets. Do you think Isak would go to Saudi? Well, apparently he said he only wants to go to Liverpool. Doesn't matter about the money. He's not interested in the money, according to the rumours. Even if they offered him 500k. So again, according to his agent, he only wants to go to Liverpool. And again, the rumoured wage at the minute is even less, or I think Ekitike is 250, and I think Isak is going to be rumoured to be on 270, 280, somewhere around that. Wirtz is on 370, I think he is. I'm sure the lads in the chat will correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that is where we are, isn't it? Now we seem to be stuck in a little bit of quandary. We need to act fast. Like I say, talking last night, Sesko has a gentleman's agreement. Gentleman's agreement mean absolutely nothing. Same as contracts today. If a player wants to go on strike, there ain't a lot you can do. But you can't force him to play, but you can force him to sit and watch. But again, the only thing that happens to us is, one, we lose a damn good striker, and two, he's devaluing every minute he sits on a bench.
What would you do, Gary? What would you accept, and who would you get?
Like I said, if they were to come in with a low ball offer, and again, I'm thinking of, it's not about what I see, what we could do with 150 million pounds. Like I said, we've got 3 weeks before the start of the Premier League, and that has got to be paramount in anybody's head. I think it's 5 weeks before the window shuts. So we've got again, if you listen to all the rumours, we only deal with one player at a time. So for me, there is a lot of players at Liverpool that are being shown the exit door. If it was the player that Eddie Howe felt as though he could fit into his current system, be a squad player, even if he's not a starting 11 player, a squad player. There seems to be a number of players that Liverpool want to get rid of. I'd ask the question, who is available and how much are you going to offer with that player? Because at the end of the day, we need strengthening in depth. Yeah? We need, if you're going to fight on all fronts. So if Liverpool are thinking of coming in with a low ball offer like this £120 million, it would be a complete no, which has already been stated. And Ramayan has said, he's coming over, he's flying over, and he's going to be involved in some of these negotiations because they want top dollar. And that's what I said. It has to be right for whatever Newcastle see fit now, whether that's 150 million, 140 million, 130 million plus a player. It makes no difference. What I think is good for me, it's what's good for Eddie Howe's vision of what he needs in the squad. And if he recognises a player there that can be available, then I can't see any issues with taking a little bit less money and taking a player. Because you've still got to go and get a player if you have the money.
Exactly.
So, for me, I know people out, in viewerland are not going to be happy with what I've just said there, but it's fact. We still need 4 players minimum. And like I say, if you can fill one of them voids with a player that's already there, I'm not saying anybody. I'm not saying somebody from a reserve. I'm saying somebody that you've seen, Premier proven player. He's played. People are always going to say Harvey Elliott. I like Harvey Elliott.
I like him, but where would he kind of fit in terms of bulking up the squad? Like he's favoured on the right side, isn't he? And we've got Murphy and Langer.
We've got Murphy and Langer. That's what I said. That's what I said. He has to fit the bill. You couldn't just go and pick up a player. And I mean, I know Brant's in the chat there saying 2 players and 50 million and laughing. And that's what I said. People will always see the other side of what I've just said, and they're not looking at what is needed at Newcastle. And it's criminal to think that we are in a situation where it's not money that is against us at the minute; it's time.
Yeah.
Because we know we've got money in the pocket with Isak. What we haven't got is time on our side if we're dealing with one case scenario at a time. Now, the other spin is, can we survive until January? Can we have some money in the pea pot and say, you know what? This is the business that I'm going to go with now. I ain't going to rush and throw all my eggs in one basket. I'm going to bring 1 or 2 players in to cover the areas of weakness that I see, and I'm going to leave the rest till January window and then go back in again. Again, I'm not Eddie Howe. I have no idea of the process. All I know is the Wissa situation at this present moment in time, according to all the rumours that are out there, is there's been some personal terms or personal issues that Wissa has been involved with, hence it's delayed the time. Now, again, the only thing I can think of is Wissa's doing what every other player, the Gyökeres, the Isak to a degree, is not happy. He wants out from Brentford. Yeah? He wants to come to Newcastle. I'd be happy with him coming to Newcastle. If he said, I want to go to Newcastle, Šeško has said, I want to play at Newcastle. Hence this gentleman's agreement with RB Leipzig. If they can, shake hands on an agreement for a price that suits both club and, sorry, my young'uns, happy birthday to you. Yeah, they already know. They've already been sending me happy birthdays. Oh, fantastic. The kids have drawn me some great pictures. She's drawn me the bridge, the Tyne Bridge, and 3D bridge and the magpie. She's done a cracking job. And this one here has done me a portrait of myself. And I must admit, it's better than I do. It's better than I look now, to be fair. Nice. So, yeah, it is a crazy situation that we're in. And I find, like I say, it doesn't matter which way you swing. And that's why I said there's going to be loads of people in this chat that will have an opinion on where we go. 52,000 coaches every home game sit on the bench and would do it differently. And that's what I said. Sometimes you have to trust the process because we aren't big enough in our own ability to change the process. We can only suggest things. And that's what I'm saying. All I'm doing is throwing a suggestion into the water and say, whatever Eddie Howe's vision is and how Eddie Howe can make a really crap situation as we stand at this present moment in time better, only he knows. Andy Howe, has to support that, and Steve Nixon has to try and achieve that. And whoever else comes on board, Sud's this new technical director, if he's having anything to do with it, then so be it. What are you saying there? Sorry, mate. I've just had. How are you saying? How old I am? Well, I'm closer to 60 than I'll ever be 50. Let me put it that way. I'm 58 today, mate. Getting well past it now. But that is.
Why is it every year, mate?
Well, I'd like to say, I still learn. I still learn everything every day, mate. To be fair, I've probably forgot more than I'll ever remember. But that's what I said. That's where we're at. And like I say, with Šeško, this gentleman's agreement that he's had with Leipzig is if the right value comes in, the right offer comes in, and apparently, they are working really hard, and that is the thing for me. And I know the lads was. Thanks, Iniesta. I wish I was 48, mate. I'd probably still be able to move my legs better than I do. Oh,
definitely.
thank you. Oh, thank you. They do look at this this current situation that we find ourselves in, and I say to myself, you know, where the promise was, and I think this is, like I said, and I think this is why we feel so deflated and dejected to a degree. The start of the window, when we went in for Ekatike, we expected and was told that there's going to be two front men playing in the same team. Alongside Isak, we're going to have Ekatike. And that's what puts everybody on a pedestal. And
Yeah,
it feels, like I said, not only are we in a situation where we haven't got Ekatike, he's gone to a rival. We haven't also now going to have Isak, because I honestly believe even if Isak starts the season in a black and white shirt, he won't be in the squad. And I can't see the point in that.
yeah.
And
I mean,
the domino effect, then, isn't it? You know, what happens
yeah.
to the other team members around him that get affected by his attitude?
Aye, that'd be a nightmare. That's why I say try and get it done as soon as possible, really, while
Yeah,
getting maximum money, obviously.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, with the whole two up front, that was being leaked, wasn't it, through the press?
Yeah.
So where was that coming from? So, like, do you think that was genuine, or do you think that was the press just getting it wrong? Because now it looks like, obviously,
That's what I said. Who do you who do you believe anymore?
Yeah,
You see,
yeah,
I made a suggestion, and that's why I said when you look at the, I'm going to go on the words of Eddie Howe, right? When he turned round and he did his interview to the loss of Celtic, and he was talking about Isak being left out of the squad and sent home because of all the media talk. When he started to say he understands that a footballer's career is short, right? These are all these little red flags that you start reading into, and you start saying to yourself, there is something in this. And then you go back to the Ekatike deal, and you say to yourself, what would we go in for a player, Ekatike, who is obviously potentially the starting player, unless there has been a conversation between a player's agent and the management team to say he wants to look elsewhere. Because you wouldn't go for a player of Ekatike's value unless you're willing to play him at least half a games, if not, more. And that's why I said, Liverpool have got Nunez, who they want to offload. Who else have they got? I mean, unfortunately, they lost Jota because of that terrible accident. Rest in peace. So they need two decent strikers for them to challenge on all fronts. Now, obviously, I made that tongue-in-cheek comment last night where I said, Clive Allen was bought for Arsenal, never played a game for them, and then obviously was swapped on to Crystal Palace for Kenny Sampson. And like I said, they hold the cards because they've got Ekatike, one of our mainstays. And that's what I said. It takes the pressure off Newcastle if the Sesko deal gets done, or the Worcester deal gets done. I'm going to say either or both would be better, because then Newcastle can say it's whatever money we want.
yeah.
Because we've got somebody in place of that
Exactly.
player. And like I say, even if it takes till January, you sit there and you can suck your thumb, you can throw your toys out the pram. We've got players that want to play in a black and white shirt. It's up to you, mate. You've got 3 more years on your contract. But like I say, the biggest problem by doing that is his valuation goes down. And that's what you've got to take. You either take the money now and, like I say, make it right for the club, whether it's cash and player, I should say, or whether you're stubborn, you say to yourself, I'm going to get somebody in your setup that will take your place, and you can sit and watch if that's what you want to do as a player. But you're losing out. And don't forget, it's World Cup year. Yeah, so all of these players, and that's what I said, there ain't a single player that's got any backbone that's going to go to any club that wants to play on the bench.
Yeah.
Because they all want to put themselves forward for for the international duties. And that's what I said. It's a very, very difficult scenario for any of the Newcastle management Steve Nicks and Andy Howe to go out there and try and sell to somebody, you're going to be behind Isak in the pecking order. It's virtually impossible to do because it's a World Cup year. You know, they're either going to come from wages that we can't even afford to pay our stars, or they're going to tell us to bugger off, which has virtually already happened.
So again, I think that's another reason why now, if we're going to sell, is the time, really, to get that maximum value while it's at its peak, and then to get the likes of Cisco and Wissa, who know they're going to be playing minutes. Certainly Cisco, anyway. I think Wissa would be more happier to be kind of, I say backup. He'd still play plenty of games because of the fixture list that we're going to have. I mean, I mentioned last night, and I do agree with what you're saying, Gary, in terms of can we take players from Liverpool because it saves time and it makes the deal work for us as well, and we can then go on to a second striker, then other positions. I'm not against Wissa. I mean, 19 goals last season, and obviously, so Prem proven. He's established and come in straight away, and you can rely on him. At the same time, I did say about Gakpo last night, and I'm saying that I don't know what the crack is, whether Gakpo is settled there, whether he gets enough minutes for his liking, whether Arne Slot would be, a big red cross against losing him, whether Gakpo will be open to coming to us. I don't know, but
I can't see it, mate. To be fair,
it's maybe not a goer, but he out of everybody at Liverpool, he seems the best fit in terms of like for like, kind of like not in terms of ability, but in terms of a striker coming in to then supplement somebody like Cisco. I mean, if not him, then obviously Noon. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, when you think about it, the difference between, you're talking about Liverpool now, again, player for player type of thing. You look at the forward line, apart from, you could probably say Salah. I've never really seen him go through the middle. The likes of Diaz can play through there. Gakpo can play through there. They've got such a variation. I mean, they've even thrown Zoboszlai up top in games. And that's what I said, when you've got a squad of players where you can, to a point, cherry pick a side that you can get something from. Every player within the names that I've just said will give you a variation on point. What we have is Anthony Gordon, Isak, Asula. Yeah, not much of a variation. Like I said, train track as Asula. Don't have to defend against him. He'll come at you, Mr. Yo-Yo. You've got Anthony Gordon, who doesn't looks like he knows what a striker's role should be. Plays more time going out wide than he does through the middle. I don't mind that. And you've got the main man. This is what's made him so popular and known worldwide. Is Isak, who runs the line across three, and he's so comfortable with the ball at his feet. And I just, like I say, this is why I said, he reminds everybody so much of players that, of old, that used to grace the ball. And like I say, never look out of control. Even though he can be clumsy at times, he always looks balanced and in control.
Silky smooth.
Yeah, and present. And that's why I said there's a difference in everybody's role. And I think, you're trying to, I suppose, compare apples and pears. It's like totally different players that play. And like I say, I'm not saying any of those Liverpool players that I mentioned are out and out strikers. I just think they give you more of a link-up player than any of the ones that I've said through the middle, even if it means they move the ball sideways or through the yardage in a triangle. They've got the ability to see the game. We don't have that quality player yet, and that's what we need to work to. Again, I have to bring this up because this has been said so many times. Brant's put in the chat there. What Isak has said is he wants to explore his options. He hasn't apparently wanted at least 300k a week. That's all we know. I mean, Saudi can do that easily. Also, we had no formal transfer request. Listen, all I'm saying, I'm happy for you to believe what you want. I can't change what is written down in journal world. All I know, and I can only say from my coaching experience, when a player is exploring his options, it's got nothing to do with wages. Bugger all to do with wages. It's
To me,
it's being tapped up by another club. And
yeah,
it's happened to me in the past. That's what I said. I know what goes on behind the scenes. It's not as if it's something new.
Yeah.
It's been happening for decades. Players get tapped up. They're asked over the phone directly, how much money would you like? And how much money would you consider coming to us? And
Yeah.
if that money is matched, then unfortunately, and again, you have to be a squad better than ours. There's no point going just for money if you're not going to win anything. There's very few of them players, I hope, at Newcastle. But I do honestly believe that this guy has been tapped up, and I believe, there ain't a thing that Newcastle can offer him now that will keep him at Newcastle.
Yeah, and I think him, quote, exploring his options is a polite way of saying, I want to go.
I want out,
but I don't want to lose my loyalty bonus by handing a transfer request in.
Yeah.
Basically.
And that's what I said. I mean, people can believe what they want to believe. You know what I mean? And that's what I said. And you're absolutely spot on, Tim. It's just the polite way of saying, here's my transfer request. That is exactly what it is. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he does stay, for the 200,000 that we've offered and not move across to Liverpool. But I just can't see it. I seriously cannot see any way back now, which is, like I said, but what we've got to do is we've got to be proactive rather than fucking reactive. Like I say, go and get these players on board, and if Liverpool don't match what we want, then he sits and watches, and we'll take it on the chin. This is when you're going to see the backbone of Newcastle. It's whether they've got that dogged, I suppose you can say, stubbornness to make any club that want him now pay the price for him. And that's what I said. At the minute, we don't seem to have a lot of weight or a lot of credibility, but we need to get that back, and we need to get it back sooner rather than later. Buddy, I've seen we've been out 1:45 here talking literally, as we always do. Listen, I want to thank you, Tim, for joining me for like an hour and 3/4. I have got to get my head down the road though, because it's birthday day for me, and I am out on the jolly with the family in a minute. So I am going to have to swiftly get going. But before I go, I want to thank everybody that's been in the chat. It's been a fantastic chat. There's been lots of toing and froing, and for the majority of you, you have kept it very, very friendly. So thank you so much. Thank you to Sean for your birthday wishes, matey. Thank you for Hamadjan, for Matty, for DJ Steele, for Sedant, and who else was there? That's it. Matty and DJ Dante Steele again. Thank you, everybody that's gifted them out for anything that you wanted to, your super chats, your wishes, and everything else. It's been lovely to be with you this afternoon. But until the next one, which is, I think, well, obviously, if you haven't already, then before you go, come over and just smash the likes for me, and definitely subscribe, and definitely hit the bell, because as soon as there's news out there, we will be on live doing some type of view of what's going out there. Thank you again, Tim, for your really
cheers. Enjoy your day, Gary.
Yeah, thank you so much for your support today as well, my friend. It's great to have you with me. Until the next one, matey, we're the lads, lassies, and bairns. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
Happy Friday.